Good evening, welcome back to Matchday Live. We're live in the studios. Cel Spellman alongside Nedum and Karen Bardsley. Now, we wanted goals because our last two Champions League group fixtures have been 0-0. Karen and Nedum were here for the last 0-0. Unfortunately, the goals haven't gone the way that we wanted them. It's Manchester City 0, Seville 1. We're going to tuck into all that first half action. But just first of all, Karen, overall assessment of them 45 minutes.
I mean, yeah, initial thoughts. We started very, very well with a lot of intent to go forward, and although the possession stats might not suggest that we've dominated so much, I think overall physically we put our stamp on the game, I think, immediately when the wave after of attacks. But yeah, I think disappointed in terms of a few disjointed pieces of play throughout the structure, a couple decisions maybe being rushed or snatching at opportunities towards the end there. But yeah, I think it's a matter of time. Like, the necessary adjustments are going to get made, I think, at halftime, and I imagine that no one's probably happy with what they've experienced on the pitch for those first 45 minutes. I think Nedum's made some really good observations while we were off air, so turn it over to you.
There's a lot to buy into, but then it's context. The context is you've made a few changes. You made a few changes for a game which doesn't affect where you're standing within the group. So I think whenever you make lots of changes within a setup and it's to faces which you don't normally see, then there will be a difference in terms of performance. And some of those people, they're in the game and they're trying to get a feel for it, get used to it. But it's a different look, for, say, Cole Palmer going out there and starting. Like, he's doing his job, and he's doing his job to the best of his abilities, but it's different for the people around him because they're getting used to his particular movements within that setup.
Interesting, yeah.
So then you end up being in a position whereby, it doesn't feel as natural to pass it to Cole in his position because you kind of don't know what he's going to do. You don't know if that's the right spot for him, but he thinks that's the right spot. So it's just people getting used to each other. This is basically the role of pre-seasons and playing a series of games. Never judge a team based on one performance. It's on a whole series of, and that's why sometimes it takes people time to bed in. So it's not been to City's highest standards, but there's still, you can see the foundation of what they're trying to do. But it's just missing that little bit because for some of the people we see on the bench, Bernardo Silva, Kevin De Bruyne and the like, that stuff's second nature, and they don't have to even think about anything. They know that when Kevin goes here, I go there because that means that this, whereas for some of these, it's trying to figure out the link up.
Yeah.
Think how few times we've seen Cole get a ball from Rico to try and find Julian Alvarez. These partnerships are not quite as tried and tested as some of the other ones.
I think it's not necessarily just, the younger players as well. I think you look at Foden, floating around in an 8, how often is he kind of in that position?
Yes.
And, in terms of, if we are going to look at some of the younger players or even, Sergio Gomez at times finding himself in a position that perhaps he's not necessarily used to. So I guess what we are seeing is just little experiments kind of all over the pitch.
Just stick with them. It gets better with time.
Yes.
So I feel pretty confident the second half will be better than the first. Although the first half wasn't bad.
Yeah.
It just hasn't been the type of stuff that we've seen historically. And I apologise to everyone that's noticed that yet again I'm on a City game and they've not scored. This is going to change it at this moment. Now I guarantee. I swear by it.
Listen, I trust you. We can see some stats here. I mean, as you kind of said, Karen, though, possession still 61%. They've had one more on target, so maybe straight away you're looking at going from the 9 attempts, only 1 on target. That'd be an area to improve slightly, Karen.
Yeah, I think when the ball possession stat flashed up earlier, I think it was much closer than this, actually. So I'm quite pleased that it actually reflects what I saw.
Yeah.
Attempts on target, yeah, that's disappointing, especially considering how often we had final third entries. Total attempts, yeah, I think if you look at how the first half progressed as well, I'm not getting any sort of confidence from the Sevilla goalkeeper whatsoever. So I think that's going to be an area, especially from what Mahrez has already shown, from what Cole Palmer has already shown. He's clearly struggling with reading the flight of the ball coming in from that right side as well. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities to catch them out. But yeah, I do think it's just going to be It's only a matter of time.
Matter of time.
Yeah, we'll sell it to the viewers. It's a matter of time. It's inevitable.
We'll speak about the goal in just a second. We mentioned Cole Palmer a couple of times, and we were trying to work out, I think, as everyone does, you know, who is going to play where in this in a City formation. We thought maybe Palmer on the wing, but it's actually Grealish is over on his left where we used to see him, Mahrez on the right, Haaland down the middle, and Cole Palmer in the middle. What do you think the thinking was there?
I think maybe with Cole, the expectation is that like maybe he can play the 8. I think it's similar in some ways to like a James McAtee who's gone on loan. You know,
Yes.
Sometimes you see them playing in the forward line, but then the sort of 8s are the positions which they want to aspire to be in. And this is a good test for him because he's obviously a good dribbler, but they want to make him an overall like really good footballer. So you can see in the way that he's playing today. Sometimes when City go with, say, Rico, Gundogan and Gomez in the middle, like he's drifting off behind people to try and get stuff to receive on the half-turn and sort of inject a bit of pace in. And then when the ball gets played to Mahrez, he's making runs in behind. So I think that kind of suits his game, and he teaches him to like run with and without the ball. I think sometimes if he was to just play in the forward line, then it kind of gets a bit more one-dimensional. It's like, give me the ball, I'll do something. Now he has to try and find ways to be involved in it, and I think it suits him, and it's like a good test for him because, you know, you're playing against like Ivan Rakitic. You know, he's not bad. You know, there are a few other players in there who aren't too bad. So this is sarcasm, by the way. So just in case anyone's missing it, I'm quite dry. I apologise. I have to explain it. But yeah, it's good for him, and I'm seeing his movements, understanding that sometimes when Mahrez gets it, he makes a run down the channel, not to receive the ball, but to create space for Mahrez for a 1v1. So there's a lot more things going on that maybe meets the eye really obviously. But it's a good test for him.
Yeah.
I think you also have to take into consideration the way that Sevilla started. They started essentially with 5 in the back as well.
Yes.
Very centrally, heavily dominated. So it was always going to crowd the space. It was always going to make it difficult to essentially break down a block. But then I think to your point earlier, you mentioned that Sevilla could probably hit us on a break or a transition on a few different occasions, and you know they have shown that they're capable of doing that, maybe lacking the quality in the final third. But yeah, I'm quite surprised that I didn't think they were going to be as efficient with set pieces as they have been,
Yes.
you know, which obviously brings us to the goal.
Absolutely. Well, let's dig into that goal. And the goal scorer, of course, Mir, he'd been knocking on the door a couple of times. He'd been across on the other side. There's a few elements here at play. I'm asking, you know, should Gomez have been out there marking him? There was a little exchange between the keeper and Palmer, who asked him to go to the front post. So was it feel like almost a few different elements that have played a part in this goal, do you think?
Yeah, I think we were discussing this, weren't we, over the course of the game?
This is how nerdy we are, like defensive deep dives into corners. And
I mean, honestly, I get to sit in and just listen to it. It's absolutely fascinating. It's brilliant.
I think, yeah, from a keeper's perspective, it was slightly out of range, so I don't think he's going to come and claim that. There's a lot of traffic to go through. I think we got talking about essentially playing zonal marking and what that looks like, and you know, what City typically do. Is that kind of what this moment was calling for, you know, because I think to your point initially about the two sets of defending players, like one is lined up to obviously take on the runs and slow them down and block, and then the second is to obviously make the first contacts. But what we were seeing, I think, when the ball was traveling, that no one really went to close the space, or particularly Sergio Gomez didn't even really attempt to kind of put Mir off, you know, in his approach to the ball. So I think these are things that kind of need looking at.
So there are lots of people, naysayers towards zonal marking, and there are some naysayers towards like man-to-man marking. So this is where the hybrid system really works quite well. But it does require people to really understand their roles and understand the flight of the ball and situationals type of things. So I think the cross was an out-swinging cross. So immediately the zone, there are 4 people who are literally standing in the zone, and their sole purpose is to go and head the ball. Yeah, go and really attack it. That's why you're free. You're not free to just stand around. You're free to go and attack it. And you can see in the middle, I think it's Ruben Diaz and Laporte, like they're on edge, they're trying to get to it. But I think in that moment, Gomez almost missed that role because the flight's come in and he's basically watched it come all the way over and seen it go over his head. And the striker's there in Rafa Mir, and he's had a header before. He's been like their main threat. But he's not been able to get close enough to contact him because he's been caught under the flight of the ball.
Right.
But then the second tier with that is, for City, did they need to start on the 6-yard line for that cross when they know it's an outswinger? Maybe they could have been a step higher, and if they were that, then maybe they'd been able to contact. And then also, the people who were meant to be man-marking as such, just before the cross came in, they didn't really bump them and affect the runs. Like, nobody's expecting, say, Rico, for example, to win a header against someone, but you knock them off their stride so they're timing goals, and it gives the people who are zonally marking the chance to go and head the ball and be free.
I see, okay.
So it's more of like a defensive. They could have defended that situation better. For as good a header as it was and a cross as it was, they could have made them work harder for that goal. So ultimately, it's a series of mistakes that leads to the goal, and that tends to be the way that most goals are scored.
Yeah, thank you, Nedum. That was absolutely brilliant. Just while you were talking as well, just to say there was a little clip of Rodri there, full kit going out to warm up, so maybe we're thinking that could be a substitution half-time. If that is the case, what do you think that is, just to try and maybe get a grip in midfield a little bit more, possibly, Karen?
Yeah, I would. It would suggest that he would probably come in into the sixth position, just where he typically tends to find himself. But because we are so advanced, we're essentially playing.
It's an interesting one, that. Sorry to jump in. Like, I don't think they've been that bad in midfield. Like, especially not in the anchor, because Gundogan's done well. But I wouldn't be surprised if they went like for like and maybe just shared the minutes out.
It's just interesting, though, isn't it? Because I'm not really sure who he's going to take off. And
I know, yeah.
This is the thing, is because Gundogan, I think we've spoken about this before, is that he serves as an excellent link in that transition as well. So he's we all know that he's happy to play in an 8. He's happy to play in the 10. So I don't really know, unless someone's picked up a knock, like where he's going to come in.
You'd hope that it's a plan that they had in advance, and they're maybe going to tweak something. But then again, if you see Rodri coming on, the options are there, because whichever one of the sort of 3 midfielders he takes off, if he does do that, then it creates a different option. Because unless he goes like for like, say with Gundogan in there, but if he doesn't take off Gundogan, then before you know it, Gundogan's in the 8, playing alongside a Foden or possibly a Obama.
I wouldn't be surprised if. I mean, this is a bit weird, but if he goes...
Well, Gundogan's there anyway, so
three
and
in the
Cole's
back.
there and Phil's there.
So 3 in the back, okay.
3 in the back, 2 holding, and essentially like free-for-all up top.
Yes, yeah.
Hang on a second. Was Rodri in trouble? Is he getting punished to getting sent out in a shirt to go and warm up in the rain? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm seeing everybody there except for Sergio Gomez. Is that right?
Yeah, I can't see Gomez, yeah.
Who's this? This is Laporte down here, yeah.
Yeah, there's Hooligans down there. Well, they're still in the locker room, so we'll see. I'm sure there'll be a couple more to make his appearance. We'll see if Rodri is coming on or not, or maybe he's just been, as you say, he's been gone to enjoy the Manchester rain. But myself, Karen and Nedum, we're going to be back at full time, hopefully talking about a Manchester City win, which will involve more goals, and that way it'll break the curse, Nedum, so we'll be all right. I've got faith. Please, and remember, on the Manchester City app, Alistair Mann has got your commentary, so I'm going to hand over to Alistair now, and I'm going to see you all after the full-time whistle's blown. Come on, City.